Okay, so I put a community post up on YouTube asking what aspects of weight loss do you find the hardest? Diet, being in a calorie deficit, exercise related to cardio, exercise related to weight training, or diet related to nutrition. And I got two replies on this post, and they were both diet related. It was diet, how to be in a calorie deficit, and nutrition. So there wasn't much detail on the post, so I'm just going to have to sort of assume what the problem is there. And what I'll do is I'll tell you what I found, because that was the hardest part for me. It wasn't exercise, it was diet. So if I tell you what my hardest part of diet was, and you can relate to my story, then you're probably going to find the information useful. If when I'm saying how I found diet a problem, you're like, yeah, none of that relates to me, then the advice probably isn't going to relate either. So for me, my main problem was I just had an amazing ability to eat everything and anything. I would eat healthy foods, unhealthy foods, but I could literally eat everything. If there was, I don't know, a box of chocolates or a packet of biscuits, I could just eat the whole lot and then eat some more. I could eat it first thing after waking up. I was just like a bottomless pit. I would eat endlessly. And obviously, that's those two problems. I'm not in a calorie deficit. I'm in a massive surplus. I could eat like 6,000 calories in a day. And nutrition is the other one. And that was because I was eating junk food. So I could eat too much of the wrong thing. So that's a complete opposite situation. So, and I consider myself quite sort of not as bad as it gets because I wasn't massive. I was 16 stone 9 at my heaviest. I think that's about 220 pounds. That might be wrong, but I was pretty heavy. So that was because I could eat anything and everything, and it was addictive. So if that's your problem, you're eating too much of the wrong things, you got to ask yourself, why is that the case? And that is because you're addicted to food. So you can't stop. An addiction is carrying on in a certain behaviour despite knowing that it's got negative effects. So a heroin addict knows it's got negative effects on his health, but he keeps doing it regardless. So the word addict seems like quite a strong word, but we're all addicts nowadays. We're addicted to food and we're addicted to technology, our screens, whether we like it or not. We know it's not the best thing, but we keep doing it anyway because it fires off receptors in the brain that make us feel good. So the two problems people had were being in a calorie deficit and not eating nutritious foods. And the reason they're a problem are because you're addicted to hyperpalatable foods, and so was I. So you have to transition from being addicted to food to not being addicted to food. And the actionable steps I give you in this video are going to be how I went about doing that. So first you got to ask, why am I addicted to food? This is a problem, I'm trying to address it, and it seems to be out of my control. And that's because you're trying to avoid stress. Anytime you do a vice or an addictive activity or behaviour that you know has negative side effects, it's because you're trying to avoid stress in some way. So you're using food as a stress management tool. So you might eat when you're bored, when you're tired, when you're sad. These are all stressful things. So stress feels uncomfortable. As soon as you eat palatable food, you feel better. So you're using food as a way of feeling better. So, and there are many different ways of managing stress. You might feel anxious and you smoke a cigarette and you feel better. So that is stress management to an addictive substance, smoking. Now another way of looking at it is you might feel anxious. One person smokes a cigarette and feels better. The other person meditates for 20 minutes or goes for a walk and feels better. One of them is addictive. They might both be addictive, but the walking doesn't have negative side effects. So you're addicted to food, you're trying to eat less, and when you do eat, you're trying to make it more healthy because your goals are weight loss and to build muscle. and just general health. I've got 5, maybe 6 steps on how to do that. Step 1, you're avoiding discomfort. So whenever you feel uncomfortable, you eat food that makes you feel better. So this is unrelated to food, but this was the first step I used. I had to get used to discomfort, and the way I did that was a cold shower every morning. So I'd do my normal shower, sort of 5 minutes of hot water, clean myself. At the end, I'd turn it on the coldest setting and do that for 30 seconds to a minute. I think they call it a Scottish shower or a James Bond shower, and it makes it sound cool, so you're doing a James Bond shower. So cold showers, and what that does is you might still binge eat shit for that day, but knowing every morning, if you have a shower in the morning, it's better because it's like your anchor. You wake up, you have a cold shower, and you've primed your brain. I've done something uncomfortable that I didn't want to do, and I was able to do it. It's not impossible. Anybody can do a cold shower. And if you haven't got the capacity to do a cold shower, then you're probably not going to achieve much else. You're not going to get the results elsewhere. So I just set that as like my anchor. Every day, regardless of how I feel, I do a cold shower. Once you've done the cold shower, you're like, well, if I can do that little bit of discomfort, I can probably push my next meal an hour. I'm hungry, but I can deal with it for an hour. It's probably the same level of discomfort as a cold shower. And there are so many side benefits from cold showers. Just Google it. I'm no doctor, but it sort of like reduces inflammation and just helps a lot of stuff. But that's not the reason. We're doing cold showers to get used to being uncomfortable. Step 2 is you don't like having time away from food. So you might eat as soon as you wake up and snack all throughout the day. There's no period of time where you're not eating for like a long period, and then you'll eat right before you go to bed. So the only time you're not eating is when you're asleep. And I could eat from the moment I woke up all the way through the day to when I went to, like, right before I went to sleep. So I was just so addicted to it. I could probably wake up in the middle of the night and have some food. I probably did that at some point. So you feel stressed when you're not eating food. So that's another skill you need to train. And the way you do that, so actionable step 2 is intermittent fasting. Introducing set times when you're not eating. So you will feel stressed because of you're not managing the stress with food, but you'll have to deal with that stress. But where the time frame is set, it's like if you're doing a prison sentence. I read this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and he said there's like a psychological thing that happens. If you know you're going to get out, a lot of the inmates thought they would be released by Christmas, so they lasted till Christmas, and then when Christmas came and they weren't released, their morale like drops right down. So that was a weird analogy, but the same happens with food, and that's why intermittent fasting's good. If you say, right, I can't eat junk food ever again, that will stress you out because you will just give up. With intermittent fasting, if you say your first meal's at 9 a.m. and you can snack all day long during that time, and then your last meal is at 6 p.m. Once you've had your last meal, you make sure you have it before 6 p.m. and then you can't eat again until 9 a.m. the next morning. Normally, you would probably snack later on and earlier on in the next morning. But once you've set that, it's 6 p.m, I can't eat till 9, there's no more, you can't justify it. Normally you would justify it and say, well, if I have a banana, that's healthy, so it's fine that I eat it. But once you set this rule, an intermittent fasting rule, you'll go in that time without food, you will feel bored or sad or uncomfortable, and you'll have to deal with it. And once you've done it once, you realise, well, I didn't die and I didn't give in. So then you do it the next day. And eventually, if you do that long enough, it will just become a routine and you'll feel better not eating all the time because you're not spiking insulin. So step 2 is intermittent fasting, getting used to time away from food. So the thing you're addicted to, you're removing it and you'll get used to the stress, and that stress will slowly come down as you get used to not using food as a stress management system. Step 3 is implementing meals. So now you've got the time that you first eat and the time that you last eat. So that's the breakfast, or when you break the fast, and dinner is when you start the fast for the overnight cycle. Once you've got those two set, and you can choose depending on what your lifestyle is and your setup, it doesn't really matter when they are, but you want to try and aim for a 16-hour fasting window and an 8-hour eating window. So once you've set those parameters, within that time, you want to have meals, 3 or 4 meals, and don't snack in between. So again, you got the time that you're fasting, that's time away from food, time away from the addictive behaviour. Then you've got time in between meals. So you might have breakfast and you've got to wait 2 hours until lunch. And that's time that you normally would have snacked in between. So we haven't actually said eat less or eat different foods, but just by restricting the time in which you can eat, it will create a calorie deficit naturally, just because you haven't got as much opportunity to eat. You might compensate by eating more within a smaller time frame, but don't worry about how much you're eating. You can count calories, but even if the number goes up, I did this, I implemented it as the most important thing is that I have my first meal at 9 a.m. and my last meal at 6 p.m. During my eating window, I can eat what I want. I even counted calories and the calories increased, but I didn't actually gain weight. And I think it's because of the insulin regulation, and you start burning fat better because you're fasting. So insulin resistance, the symptoms of insulin resistance reduce anyway. So that's the first skill. You want to get into time restricted eating, and that's intermittent fasting and having meals. So then the fourth thing is going to be stress management. So you've used food and maybe other substances to manage stress. So you want to start managing stress in more productive ways. So that might be walking, lowers cortisol. Cold showers, actually, I found the best way that I manage stress is cold showers or sea swims. So that's a double benefit. You're already doing the cold showers if you've implemented that step, and now it has the added benefit of reducing stress. For you, the sauna heat might reduce stress. For me, the sauna increases stress and it would not work. But you've got walking, meditation, reading. Sleep is the obvious one. Most people are sleep deprived anyway, so if you just get the correct amount of sleep, that's going to manage stress. That is the number one factor with stress. If you've got poor mental health, you need to prioritize sleep. And if you can't sleep, just do non-sleep deep rest, which is basically laying down in bed as if you're sleeping and just try not to think about anything. So laying down and not sleeping but thinking and ruminating and going on your phone, checking social media is not going to be... just checking social media is a very stressful activity, and that's another addictive tendency that people use to feel okay. So you might feel bored and the first thing you do is check Instagram, or looking at a bunch of people whose lives are much better, supposedly on the surface it looks like their lives are much better than yours, is stressful, because then you're comparing yourself subconsciously. Why am I not in Dubai with money and on a yacht and a jet ski and all that? So that's stressful. That's not a way of relaxing. So you need to put the phone down, lie down, either meditate. But that's something you need to figure out, a stress management system that actually works for you. And I did see a study that chocolate reduces stress in a positive way. I can't remember where I heard that. But you might, within your eating window, within a meal, you might strategically use chocolate as a way of managing stress, but strategically using it rather than it's 12 o'clock at night and I feel sad, so I'm going to eat some chocolate and then go to bed, and then it's going to wreck your sleep. Like, that's dysfunctional. That's addictive behaviour. Whereas if you say, I'm allowing myself chocolate at 12 o'clock with my second meal. That's constructive. That's stress management. You're choosing to manage stress in a productive way. You might be a smoker, and that's another way you use to manage stress. So just be mindful that all of these behaviours, any vice and addictive behaviour, is just a way of managing stress. And sleep is normally the best way of managing stress. So that was the first problem, was how to be in a calorie deficit. And I would say once you get all of these disciplines in order, and they take a long time to get right, your calorie intake will go down just because you're restricting the amount of time that you have an opportunity to eat. So you've got less meals, less snacks. You're not eating after 6 and before 9. There's just less time to eat. So naturally the calories will come down. But in the beginning, don't worry about calories. Just get each discipline down. Cold shower every day. If you can't do that, that's your main focus. Don't worry about anything else. Right, I'm doing a cold shower every day. And you might not want to add that. You might just want to focus on the diet stuff. Then intermittent fasting, time restricted eating. It's a rule set in stone. I can't eat after 6 p.m. until 9 a.m. the next morning. Just every day, just mark on the calendar. Did I do it? Green tick, yes. Red cross, no. And here's an extra tip, is refractory period. Now, this I think applies, I don't know if it's a generic term, but I think it just applies to if you're a man and you have sex, there's a certain period of time that you can't, there's a refractory period until you can go again. So it might be 10 minutes, it might be an hour, but it's like a reset when you can redo the activity. Now, I don't know if it just means that, but I use the term, if you fuck up on a diet, say you say to yourself, Monday morning, I'm on this new diet, and you hit the diet perfectly, you do exactly what you said, and then Tuesday you do the same, Wednesday you do the same, and then Thursday you fuck up and eat a McDonald's and a load of chocolate and some cake. I use the term refractory period to mean when you next get back on the diet. So normally you'd fuck up on a Thursday and you'll say, right, I messed that up, I'll go again on Monday. And that means you got Friday, Saturday and Sunday. You're in no man's land. You're not really on the diet and you're not off of it. And you've said Monday because it's a psychological fresh start. You want to get the refractory period as low as possible. So now I was doing daily refractory periods. So I would say, right, breakfast, or I started eating at 9 a.m. and then I had another meal at 12. And then I had a snack in between, and then my last meal was a bit bad. I would kind of allow myself to mess up and then start again the next morning. But you want the refractory period to be as short as possible. Because you tend to just go, well, I've messed up now, so I might as well just carry on the bad behaviour. So now my refractory period is meal by meal. So if I eat poorly at 9 a.m, I finish and say, right, my next meal is going to be clean. That's why my cheat meal strategy on Sunday is cheat meal first thing, cheat meal for my second meal, and then my third meal is always clean, because then I've reset. I'm not going into Monday with sort of a previous fuck up. But I hope that makes sense. So that's implementing time restricted eating, essentially. All of those are time restricted eating. And then the other side was nutrition. So you was eating too much, and by restricting the amount of time you eat and when you eat, you're going to reduce the amount you eat, just naturally. The other side was nutrition is what you eat. So you're eating too much of the wrong thing. So now we're going to address what you eat. So I'll probably have to do a separate video on what nutritious food is, because it's completely, I don't know, it's probably not what you think it is, and it's it's open to interpretation. So when I first got into dieting to lose weight, I thought it was essentially vegetables, salad, and stuff like that. But the more I learn, the further away I get from vegetables being good for you. So, but that's quite a deep rabbit hole and takes a lot of energy to understand. But if you just want a quick, like a brief overview, vegetables and like leafy greens essentially are an organism that don't want to be eaten because they're trying to survive like every other organism. So they produce lectins and defense chemicals so that when things eat the leaves, it deters them from eating them. And we're an organism eating a leaf, so that lectin disrupts our stomach and intestines, so we don't go back and eat it. I probably didn't explain that very well, but I'll have to make a separate video on that. But essentially what I've found healthy food to be is meat and fruit is like the two main, because fruit doesn't have defense chemicals. It's actually brightly coloured and tastes sweet because it wants to be eaten as a way of is it proliferating itself. So you eat a fruit, consume its seeds, and then walk around and spread those seeds out through your like poo. So meat and fruit basically is what I've come to deem nutritious foods. So when I sort of promote beef, eggs, and eggs, fruit and stuff like that, you might think, oh well, why is he not talking about kale and salad and veg? That's why. So there are a couple of books you might want to check out. I think you've got The Plant Paradox, and I don't know, I'll do a separate thing on that, but you've got to sort of do your own research on what you deem nutritious food as. And it's not going to be, you're not eating it because it's not palatable. You're addicted to palatable foods. So they're high in sugar, and it's sugar mainly that makes food palatable, but they're highly processed. They're not natural foods. So you're eating those because they taste nice and they reduce the stress. So you're using it as a stress management. Otherwise, you would just binge eat kale. You'd go, oh, I feel a bit bored. And then you'd eat some kale and you'd feel better. But that's not the case, because kale is not full of sugar and it doesn't hit the same receptors. So now we've got to transition over from palatable foods that do reduce stress to nutritious foods that are just satiating. They're just providing the body with nutrition. They're not providing the mind and the body with stress management. So now we're using food for what it's actually designed for. And the way you do that is, again, you front load nutrition and psychologically tell yourself, I can eat whatever I want afterwards. So now you've got your first meal at 9 a.m. or whenever you've set meal one. You say, I've decided that beef and eggs are nutritious foods. You might decide that kale and tomatoes are nutritious foods, or broccoli, right? So now you say, or I say, I'm going to eat one beef burger and 2 eggs. That's my nutrition. I've front-loaded nutrition. That's the first thing I eat. Then I can eat a donut or cereal or toast or whatever it is I would have eaten. I could even have a McDonald's breakfast. But I've front-loaded the nutritious food. Again, your calories might increase while you do that. But for some reason, when I did it, my weight didn't increase. And I don't know whether that's because your body is using the nutritious food and is storing less as fat. But you will be full up. You're probably not going to increase your calories by that much. So you eat the nutritious food and then you reward yourself with the palatable food. What will happen is, as you add the nutritious food first, you'll get full up and you won't eat as much as the palatable food. Again, this is a slow process. You do it slowly over time and you will mess up, and that's when you implement refractory period. So you might eat no nutritious food for meal one, and just binge eat a load of crap, and then the refractory period is each meal. So the next meal, you come back and go, right, I'm going to eat my nutritious food, then eat what I want. And over time, you will increase the amount of nutritious food, decrease the amount of palatable sugary food, just because you're full up from the nutritious food. And nutritious food is more satiating anyway. It fills you up because your body knows what it needs. It's only craving sugar because it's addictive. It's not nutritious. It actually strips the body of nutrition. So do that over time, and this is a very slow process, but naturally you will get to the point where all you crave is nutritious food, because your body just gets used to what you expose it to over and over. So now I'm at the point where nutritious food is like palatable food to me. It is nice. So, and I've chosen foods that I enjoy eating as well. But it just happens to be what I believe to be the most nutritious food. And I think that's not a coincidence. Nutritious foods taste good to the human body because it's designed to run on nutritious foods. It just makes sense to me. But every meal now, for 6 days a week, are 100% nutritious foods, and then I will factor in a cheat meal on a Sunday, 2 cheat meals, and then I'm back to nutritious foods again. And every now and then I'll fuck up, and it's normally food environment that's a problem. If somebody offers me something, or I have to spend a lot of time where there's this bad food about, then your willpower does sort of go down and you're more likely to give in. But for the most part, I've wired my brain now to enjoy nutritious food. The palatable stuff I don't even like that much. And that would sound crazy to the old version of myself that just couldn't get enough of cakes, biscuits, just everything really. But you can transition over from processed hyperpalatable food to nutritious foods, and that's how you do it. Front load nutrition, then eat what you want, and get that balance so it's more nutrition, less crap food. Then the last point, number 6, I would say, is another stress management point, and this is don't do loads of cardio to lose weight. The best way to lose weight is to be in a calorie deficit, and the best way to do that is to lower your caloric intake through your diet and lower the amount of processed food. If you increase the amount of cardio you're doing, that is going to increase stress, and then you're going to compensate by eating palatable food. So it's just a vicious cycle. You go to the gym and you do an hour running on the treadmill, and then you reward yourself with food, and it's a psychological thing. You will just do it, and the body increases appetite to the degree that you increase cardio. It's just, the body's clever. If you have to expend 400 calories going for a run, it's going to want to replenish those 400 calories, and the way it does that is by make you hungry, and then you'll want to eat more food. So I wouldn't stress about adding loads of cardio. Weight training you can keep brief. You can keep to 25 minutes if you do a quick workout, and you're less likely to increase stress. So yeah, don't add loads of cardio to create a calorie deficit. So yeah, to recap, you're trying to lose weight and build muscle. You're finding diet to be the hardest factor, and the reason you're finding that is because it's the most important, and it's the one that actually makes a difference. You can't out exercise a poor diet, but you can out diet poor exercise. I don't know if that made any sense, but it sounds about right. So you are struggling to be in a calorie deficit, and you're struggling to eat nutritious foods, and that's because you're addicted to food. You're addicted to food because you're stressed, because modern life is stressful, and you are finding ways of managing that stress that are addictions instead of actual constructive ways of managing stress. You're doing that through food. You could be doing it through addiction to the internet and social media, smoking, drinking alcohol, but the one we're addressing today is food. So you're a food addict and you're managing stress. Step 1 to get in a calorie deficit is step 1 was getting used to stress. Have a cold shower every morning to expose yourself to a stress, and it's a stress you're in control of, so it helps wire you to manage stress. Step 2, you're addicted to food, so you need time away from food to work out what stress feels like and that you can manage it without food. So you do that through time restricted eating and intermittent fasting. Step 3 is implementing meals. That's even more time away from food. So during your eating window, you're only eating at certain times, 3 or 4 meals a day. Next one, you focus on stress management actively. So you look at what causes stress. It could be work, it could be a relationship, it could be anything. And you go, right, I could eat food or drink a beer or smoke some weed, but I'm going to manage this stress in a different way. Meditate, go for a walk, cold shower, time in nature, read a book, sleep, rest, whatever it happens to be. Then you want to move away from junk food to nutritious foods. The way you do that is do your own research, define what nutritious foods is, what you believe they are. That might be a plant-based diet. For me, it's meat and fruit. Each meal, you front load the nutritious foods. You say, I'm going to eat this nutritious food, set an amount and what you're going to eat. Once you've done that, then you eat whatever junk you wanted, not restricting yourself. So with all of these steps, it's not really restriction. You can still do what you want, but you're just doing it within parameters. So that's where discipline comes in. So then over time, slowly, as you front load the nutrition and then eat the junk, the nutrition will increase. You'll get full up with the nutrition, then the junk food will naturally decrease. And you keep doing that, and in about a year's time, you will get to a point where all you're eating is nutritious food. You're not craving any junk food. You might add strategic cheat meals in just to enjoy the food you're eating. And you'll get used to the stress associated with not subduing the stress with these addictions. Next one is step 6 is don't increase massive amounts of cardio. That will just increase stress, increase hunger, cause you to eat more. So that's not a good strategy for losing weight and sorting your diet out. And then the final point is refractory period. If and when, because it's inevitable that you will mess up, don't leave it a week, because the longest refractory period is a year. New Year's resolutions. If you do a New Year's resolution on January the 1st, stick to it for a week, and you say, I'll start again next New Year. You've now got almost 12 months. You've almost got a year where you can't do anything. People rarely do it to that degree, but the next one is a week. People mess up on Wednesday, I'll start Monday. Well, that writes off days of progress. You can put on a lot of weight from Wednesday to Sunday. Make your refractory period one meal. Okay, I messed up breakfast. I didn't eat any nutrition and I ate 12 donuts. Right, are you going to start next Monday or are you going to start on your next meal? The best option is next meal. Mess that one up, next meal. Mess that one up. Now you hit your fasting window, it's your last meal for the day, 6 p.m. Now you can't eat anything until 9 a.m. By then you've slept, you've reset, your refractory period's reset. Make the first meal clean. So, I hope that helps. There's a lot to go into, but if you can put all of these pieces together, that's how I did it. I went from being a complete food addict. I would eat, it's ridiculous. I tell my mate like what I would eat and when I would eat it, and it just blows his mind that, and it's even surprising me now. Like I'll go out for a meal. I never would leave food like on my plate. I would finish my meal, and then anything anybody else left, I would eat that as well. There would be like no food left on. I would just eat everything. And now I'm at the point where I can't even finish my own meal, and that would be completely unheard of to the old me. I'd be like, I could never comprehend how people would eat half a meal and then call that it. Oh, I'm full. Full wasn't even a thing for me. I didn't understand the concept of being full. And now I've trained myself and moved so far in the opposite direction that now I know when I'm going to be full. So, hope that helps. I'll probably do a video soon on what nutritious food is and how I came to the conclusion, because it's quite different to what you probably think it is. And we can discuss it, and I'll show you some of the resources I used to come to that conclusion. But if you've got any questions, or if anything in this video didn't make sense, just let me know and we'll talk about it. Nice one. See you in the next one.